I don't care if he is dead, put him on the phone. My father died on Father's Day 2012. He was divorced and living alone, and I am an only child. So that means that I had to wrap up all of his affairs. This story centers around us trying to get his utilities cancelled. I called in to see what we had to do to get them to cancel. The lady I spoke with on the phone said to send in his certified death certificate. I sent in the certified copy of his death certificate the next day. The next month got another bill. I called again and a new woman answered. She said that because I wasn't on the account that she had to speak with the account holder. I informed her that the account holder was dead but she wouldn't budge. I had to make an appointment with a supervisor so she could speak to him herself in person. I showed up at the Board of Public Utilities with another death certificate and his ashes in the clear bag that they returned his remains in. I plopped them down on the center of her desk and said when she talked to him to tell him that I loved him for me. The woman went pale, flew out her chair, and called the cops. When they showed up, she claimed that I had assaulted her. And yes, my dad's remains were still sitting in the middle of her desk with the death certificate. The cops questioned me as to why I would do that. I told them the story. The supervisor's boss was called in and they all stepped away from the desk for a private talk. While they were talking, the cops came over to talk to me. They said that I shouldn't take human remains out in public, but there were no laws that were broken. I said that I agreed with them that it was extreme, but she insisted to speak with him in person. By then they were done talking between themselves. The supervisor's boss kissed up to me and got it taken care of. But the story isn't over yet. I had to call back a few days later to get utilities back to the house in my name. When the person on the phone saw the address and my name, I was immediately put on hold. The supervisor's boss that finally helped me got on the phone. She sucked up to me and waived all of the fees that come with setting up utilities. Just as the call was ending, she informed me that she was again so sorry for the employee's lack of compassion. She said that the employee was terminated and again she is so very sorry. TLDR, ignorant employee asked to speak to dead dad. Had a meeting in person, brought his ashes, got her fired. Now to the comments. When my father-in-law died, I had a similar issue. Had to officially inform some organization of his death by faxing his death certificate. The left hand didn't know what the right ass was doing and kept getting hassled over it. Well, where I work, we use e-faxing, so I set up a little script. I faxed them his death certificate every hour for 3 days, over the weekend. Oddly enough, they got the memo. Even small accounts that don't seem wildly important for tiny bills or services require a death certificate, and with good reason. Otherwise, anyone could call in or walk in and claim the person whose account they wanted to get into was dead. That being said, death needs to be handled with special care by representatives, and nobody should have to send in a death certificate twice. Yeah, I didn't mind sending out the death certificate. That's quite reasonable. Hell, I even paid extra to get 10 certified copies right from the get-go, so I would have plenty for everyone who wanted one. Great story. When my father died there were some stupid people too that wouldn't understand he was dead. I remember going to the cell phone company and asking them to change the account titularity, show the death certificate and explain the situation. They told me that my father had to sign the change. Oh, explained again, and they said only him can do that. I said okay then, cancel all 3 accounts then, only he can do that too. At that point I had been there for over an hour, so just said, you know what, duck it, we won't use these chips anymore. Feel free to keep sending the bills. My father is dead, so he doesn't care about debts. OP replied, I'm so glad it's not just me. Sorry for your loss. Thanks, you too. I don't know how long ago your story happened. Mine was about a decade ago. In case yours is recent, the best thing I can tell you is that it gets better with time. It never truly goes away, and even a decade from now you'll still think about him eventually, but it gets easier with time. Cheers. Have a great 2019. Happy New Year. Similar thing happened in the UK that made national news. An elderly lady had died and her daughter was looking after the estate. She had been on benefits due to her health, and despite the daughter repeatedly telling the Department for Work and Pensions that her mother had died, they kept sending her letters to say they were going to carry out a health assessment to re-evaluate her benefits. Daughter eventually agrees, waits in her mother's house with her ashes, and when the assessor turns up and asks where the mother is, the daughter pointed to the urn on the coffee table. It made the news because it is a perfect example of the lack of communication between departments in the DWP. The issue is a fundamental lack of critical thinking skills and common sense. That coupled with corporate policies written by imbeciles, and you get shit like this happening. Yes, it 100% makes sense that you don't allow account changes unless you are dealing with the account holder. But if said account holder is no longer among the living, simple logic would dictate that that is no longer possible and you need a different approach. This can't be an uncommon occurrence, so a supervisor should be able to tell you how to handle it. Ironically, the best way to avoid all this is just to impersonate the dead relative, you have all their info, and close the accounts yourself. I think part of the problem is too many people try to claim the account holder, EA, themselves, is dead to try to avoid paying, so the employees get jaded when they hear it again and don't always believe them. Now, granted, once a death certificate is received, it should immediately get notated in the file and trigger some kind of other process, but bureaucracy gonna bureaucrat. My great-aunt died and my dad tied up all her affairs, including getting her mail routed to us. Every year for 8 to 10 years we'd get a survey and donation request from her local PBS station. Dad had called to get her off the list, but it was no use. He finally filled out the survey for her with responses such as, "I do not have a favorite TV show because I am dead." We never got mail from the station after that. When my dad died nearly 20 years ago, we had a similar experience with his car excise tax bill. We notified them of his death, and sent in the certified death certificate several times. I spoke to the rep at least 12 times and explained he was deceased and would therefore not be paying his $37 tax bill. She refused to accept this and elevated to threats such as, "If he doesn't pay this bill, he will have his license revoked." I could only think to say that he probably wouldn't mind since dead men don't drive. She then demanded his current address, so I gave her the address of the cemetery and his plot number. I just don't understand how people can be so stuck on a script that they fail to comprehend the words "he's dead." Good for you for giving her what she asked for. Or makes you think, how many people try to fake death certificates to avoid payments or court/criminal issues, that this person so extremely jaded on that excuse? My thoughts as well. People aren't always just cold for no reason.